Hillary Clinton a target last night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Let's talk about that in this new book, Clinton Cash, on our roundtable, joined by Donna Brazile, our Democratic strategist, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, and our team from Bloomberg Politics, Mark Halperin and John Hammond. Welcome to you all. Donna, I got to talk to you first. I know you're close to the Clinton team. They did not want to put anybody out to talk about this book today, even though we asked. And you just saw Peter Schweitzer there. What do you make of his allegations generally, but also this specific allegation he makes that there are undisclosed donations to the Clinton Foundation from foreign charities?
Well, first of all, George, I haven't read the full book. I'm sure it's still being rewritten somewhere because the newspapers and other publications are already disputing some of the facts that he claims in his book. Look, there are more drippings in this book than juice or sauce, and what the campaign needs to do, and they did it last week, is to just go ahead and respond to these allegations. They're scurrilous. We're going to see more of them as the campaign goes along, but respond to them and continue to reach out to voters and ignore all of this background noise. That's what they need to do.
Mr. Speaker, I read that you thought these allegations are starting to reach some kind of critical mass around the foundation that could even force her out of the race?
Sure, look, this isn't a political problem. This is a historic problem. The Constitution of the United States says you cannot take money from foreign governments without explicit permission of the Congress. They wrote that in there because they knew the danger of corrupting our system by foreign money is enormous. You had a sitting Secretary of State whose husband radically increased his speech fees. You have a whole series of dots on the wall now where people gave millions of dollars. Oh, by the way, they happen to get taken care of by the State Department. Now, you raised a good standard. And, of course, having been on the Watergate Committee, she knew exactly what to do. She eliminated 33,000 emails. Richard Nixon only erased 18 minutes. So you're going to have a prima facie case that any jury would look at.
You think a jury would look at the case based on...
I think a jury would look at the totality of this case and say it is clearly against the Constitution. It's clearly against U.S. law. I mean, DOD and HHS both have rules that say you can't take more than $315.
It's a global foundation, and they released all of their donors. Something that
not all of them. Some of them they found
in the aggregate they didn't, but it was the funding. The funding was released.
3 years. They just now announced they skipped 3 years.
Look, they're amending those documents. There's no legal requirement to do so, but they're amending it, and they're adding.
A foundation controlled by your husband is the same as money to you. It is clear in federal law. This would, if it wasn't Hillary Clinton, this would clearly.
The only reason why we're having this conversation is because they are transparent. They have released a list of their donors, something that we don't get from any of the Republican super PACs or foundations.
Mark Halperin, how serious is this?
The Clinton Foundation does great work. Some of the charges against her are overstated. That's on one side of the ledger. On the other side of the ledger, it's extraordinarily serious. Imagine if an assistant secretary of state had done what Hillary Clinton, we know that she did. They'd be out of the State Department.
Which things?
Like
commingling, a family foundation, donations from foreign governments, increased speech fees, and government actions. We don't know about...
Well, no evidence of government action.
Well, there were government actions taken. What we don't know, and this goes to the deleted emails, is what kind of communication did Hillary Clinton have on her private email account regarding her husband's speeches and regarding the foundation activities that involve foreign donations? If they hadn't been so careless at the foundation, if she hadn't deleted the emails, and if they put somebody out on the show today to answer the questions, I think a lot of this could be put to rest, but none of those things are true.
And that specific question that arises, which is, are emails that were revolved around these issues, around your husband's foundation work, did those fall under the what you considered private emails, personal emails, and so therefore were flushed down the drain, or were they part of the public record? That is a question that has not been addressed, and she must answer that question, I think, because it goes to the core of whether there is at least the appearance of an obstruction of justice kind of activity on her part in getting rid of that email server.
No, this is just more trying to look under the curtain to see if there's any there. Again, I mean, look, I think they've been very forthcoming in listing their donors and showing the aggregate amount. And as Mark said, doing good work. But this is just more there to see if there's some connection. Of course, George. I mean, I think responding to the allegations in the book, they put the information out, and they'll put out more information. But the more you put out, the more you detract from the message, and you give Republicans fodder. That's all they want to do. The Republicans just want to talk about Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. They don't want to talk about the issues.
I think there's you can't take this stuff. We have federal laws that say you can't take this stuff. If this was any person but Hillary Clinton, they'd be under indictment right now for clearly straightforward problem.
But if it were that clear cut, it wouldn't have been allowed in the first place.
Right.
Well, my point is, They took money from foreign governments while she was Secretary of State that is clearly illegal. This is not about politics. It's illegal. And it's dangerous to America to have foreign governments get in the habit of bribing people who happen to be the husband of the Secretary of State or the next president of the United States.
Here's why you know this is serious, because any Democrat, almost any Democrat who's not on the Clintons' payroll will tell reporters and others privately that these are serious issues. Forget the politics. These are serious issues. The question for me right now is all these donors who gave and all the people who paid President Clinton to give speeches, what kind of communication did they have with people in the government? That may not be a quid pro quo, but everybody knows that a lot of those donations were for people who wanted access to the Clintons.
Last word?
Well, I think we all now, I think, also have examples now of where the administration, Barack Obama's administration, knew that this was a potential problem. That's why they set up the agreement that they had with the family, with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, when she took the job as Secretary of State. There are now several that we know of at this moment, several documented instances where, whether or not it's illegal, where they broke their agreement with the administration. And when you think about the president having set a standard of being the most transparent and open administration in history, and what the Clintons have done here clearly is not the most transparent and open. And I think they've, whether it's illegal or not, they violated the spirit of Barack Obama's presence.
Got to take a quick break. Up next, we'll take on the Republican field as Marco Rubio, a new frontrunner, and later all the highlights from the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
The institution of marriage as one man and one woman existed before our laws existed.
Marriage is a decision that should be defined by our state governments, not at the federal level.
We need leaders who will stand unapologetically in defense of marriage and life.
The United States of America did not create religious liberty. Religious liberty created the United States of America, and is the reason we're here today.
9 potential Republican candidates at the Faith and Freedom Coalition Forum in Iowa last night. 9 of who knows how many eventual candidates in this race. Let's talk about that now again with our roundtable. And Mr. Speaker, we were just talking just before we came on there. This field could continue to grow and grow and grow.
Oh, yeah, this is now maybe the most open field in Republican history. I used to say the most open since 1940, but they've now blown past that. I think we may have 25 candidates.
25 candidates, and we saw Dan Balls, the dean of political reporters for the Washington Post, his column today saying, is anyone afraid of Jeb? One of the things we're seeing is that no one's deterred from getting into the race, and every week, this week it's Marco Rubio, someone else climbing up into the top tier.
Well, and Rubio's rise, and right now many people call him the frontrunner, most symbolizes what Dan is talking about, both the wide openness and Jeb Bush's vulnerability. Rubio is someone who the convention, if Jeb Bush ended up in the race, so close to him and sharing a Florida base, I think right now you still have a top tier of Bush, Walker, and Rubio, pending John Kasich maybe entering the race. But if Jeb Bush falters at all, if he has to fight for this nomination, I think then you've got up to 10 people who could be the nominee. And as the Speaker said, we've never had a situation
John Howman,
like that.
Jeb Bush himself says he knows he's going to have to fight for this nomination.
Well, he's going to have to fight for it, but I think the most amazing thing is the conventional wisdom, if you talk to people who work for other Republican potential or current candidates, is they all say the same thing Jeb Bush's voters are in the Republican Party. I don't know who is for him. Not apart from the donor class, we can't find the constituents in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. They're going to be for him, and that creates the perception that there's no risk in going after him. If he doesn't have any voters out there, why not me?
Is that good for Democrats or bad?
It's good for Democrats. We saw that in 2012 because, you know, when you're in the primary season and you're trying to rally the so-called faithful and go so far to the right that you perhaps, you know, get off the field, it helps Democrats to continue to focus on what's important to the American people, the economy. And you know what? The Republicans are on a shopping spree, and that's a good thing. One of the reasons why we constantly talk about Hillary Clinton is because there's no Democratic opponent yet to Hillary Clinton. So the media seems to want to fill in that, you know, that particular void. But on the Republican side, very interesting to see these candidates compete over the weekend.
And as they compete, as the lead shifts off every single week, it does remind me of the dynamic in 2012 where Romney comes in as the putative front runner, but every week a different candidate seems to rise to the top. You had several weeks at the top of the field.
I like those weeks. No, look, I think but what's going to make this fascinating is, first of all, there's a generational shift. You look at a 43-year-old Marco Rubio, Hillary Clinton. Look at Ted Cruz, Hillary Clinton. I mean, there's a whole generation. For that matter, Scott Walker, I think, is 46. Hillary Clinton. I mean, you're going to have a younger generation of new ideas, new approaches, and their speeches actually all direct towards some kind of vision of the future. They spend much more time talking about how you get America growing again, et cetera, than they do about Hillary Clinton.
Say four things about Jeb Bush that we shouldn't overlook. He'll raise the most money, maybe by a lot. He's the most presidential in demeanor. I think he's clearly right now the most obviously ready to be president, and I still believe he's the one the Clintons fear the most. Those are four big things which, if the Republican nomination process goes by the traditional rules, will make him the nominee.
Right, and Donna Brazile, on that point, one of the things Jeb Bush is doing by pushing back on issues like immigration, on Common Core, trying to preserve some sense of holding the center if he actually gets the nomination.
If he gets the nomination, because again, these activists are looking not just for somebody who's electable, who can win in the fall, but they're looking for somebody who will champion their issues. And Jeb Bush is still trying to become that champion. You know, you mentioned age. It's not the age of the candidate, it is the age of the ideas. And the ideas that many of these Republican candidates are out there promoting are ideas that are out of sync with the American people and the population on inclusiveness and diversity, marriage equality, which George is going to talk about. So I wouldn't worry about Hillary Clinton's age. I worry about the ideas of these candidates who want to take us back to another bygone era.
On the other hand, you have a John Kasich who carried 86 out of 88 counties.
In Ohio.
In Ohio. You have a Scott Walker who got reelected despite an enormous effort to defeat him. I mean, you've got some people out there who understand how to be positive, how to occupy the center in terms of fights, and who I think would be very formidable opponents.
On John Kasich, he is making more noises to make it look like he's going to get in.
Yeah. Fascinating guy who the speaker knows well. He would like to run. He's a classic person now thinking about this because he looks at the field and says, if these are the people who might be our nominee, why not me? Because of his record in Ohio, not just electorally, but in terms of governance. One of the things he's showing is a McCain, vintage McCain 2000 openness to saying whatever's on his mind. He's always been like this. There's an authenticity there. It will create controversy for him if he runs, but he's setting the standard as much as anybody else and saying, counterpoise to Hillary Clinton, I'm going to speak what I really believe the country needs. It's effective with a lot of constituencies.
I mean, and look, I mean, you downplayed a second ago the electoral element of it. The fact that he won more than a quarter of the African-American vote in Ohio is a kind of an astonishing thing and gives him a capacity to be a great general election candidate. But going back to the earlier point, which is, what is the Republican Party today? Do the old rules still apply where the establishment frontrunner wins? Or do you have to now, because the other wing of the party has gotten stronger, do you have to straddle those two wings? I think that's why Marco Rubio and Scott Walker are both strong candidates, because they can play with the establishment and they can play with the grassroots. Kind of a problem for Kasich and a problem for Bush, because they don't play on the other side as well as they play strictly on the establishment.
My final question for the speaker. You said right at the top you could have 25 candidates in the end. We're about, the first votes will probably be next January. How's the field going to sort itself out?
The American people will sort it out with remarkable speed once it starts. But as David Broder once reminded us, all of us will talk from now until the first Iowa caucus, and nothing will have happened.
Yeah.
But we'll all have to fill the space. And then the American people start to work. And I suspect by April we'll have a pretty clear nominee.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, thank you all very much.